So being in Nairobi was really great, but obviously this is not the first that we've been involved in this process. So when did the RSC get involved?
Well, it was quite a while ago, actually, Steph, because I think we started, must have been about 2017, 2018. And really it started with work with the UK government at first, who were really interested in international chemicals policy. So there was a thing called the Strategic Approach to International Chemicals Management, and that has now morphed into something called the Global Framework for Chemicals.
Right.
Now, to support that whole initiative, it was actioned about 3 or 4 years ago that we should need a science policy panel for chemicals, waste and pollution prevention. So UNEA, which is the United Nations Environment Assembly, decided in 2022 that would happen, that we would have an IPCC-like body called the Science Policy Panel for Chemicals, Waste and Pollution Prevention. Very specific words there.
Exactly.
As we know. So we've been interested in this because the scientific voice has been quite low in this whole process, dominated by politics. You know, you're a politics graduate yourself. You know how that can
They've
dominate.
got strong interest very much in this, yeah.
And so the scientists and industry need to have a bigger voice in this. So that's now starting to happen. I attended a meeting in Bangkok, which was in January, February 2023, and that was the kickoff of the process. And then we went together to Nairobi.
We're expecting to be talking about things like capacity building and also how the panel will engage with stakeholders such as the scientists in the RSC network. So we're looking forward to a really good day to start this week off. It's a gorgeous sunny day here in Nairobi, and hopefully that is a positive sign for a good week.
It's day 3 of the negotiations here in Nairobi to establish a new science policy panel on chemicals, waste and pollution. And today we've got really into the meat of the different proposals for various aspects of the panel. So we've talked about the operating principles of the panel, and we've discussed the institutional arrangements, and we've been very vocal in this discussion, ourselves and the other stakeholders in the room, that we think it's really important for stakeholders to be involved. So that includes us as scientists and scientific organizations, and also other major groups and stakeholders, such as indigenous peoples and farmers and the other major groups according to the UN system.
I think we really learned a lot there, and we had some good successes, but also some things that we definitely still need to work on. But I think it was so great to be meeting with some other stakeholders, other organizations that are involved in the process, like you said, that aren't the governments, because obviously the governments have a strong interest in this. They'll be the members of the body when it's all done, when it's all started. But there's so many other groups, including us scientists, but also women and indigenous people, farmers, and the youth and other groups as well, that also have important knowledge to share, need to be involved in the process, and will be affected by whatever happens. And so it was so good to be able to meet with those other groups, other stakeholders there, and really strategize with them and work together with them to amplify, I think, our voices in the process, in addition to the member states.
Yeah, so the United Nations has this system called the Major Group Stakeholder System. And that surprisingly includes independent science and technologists.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we had a good progress over the week, but I would still request member states to prioritize substance over the geopolitical issues. And what we have experienced, that there is a very little focus on air pollution, which is a big concern for us coming from Asia Pacific. More than 9 million people dying every year because of the air pollution related deaths. So I hope that we can have more focus on air pollution and chemicals.
We've been very glad to take part and very glad to meet other stakeholders here. We wish we could have achieved more this week, but we think we're now on the road to getting sensible text by the end of OEWG 3.
For this experience in the open-ended working group looking for the SPP, I want to highlight the inclusion of the gender equality as a principle. And for the next one, we are looking for the inclusion of scientists from different geographical areas from the global south with different backgrounds, belonging to different groups in vulnerable situations, and the interdisciplinary experts committee.
We're now looking forward to Geneva in June, which will be the third of these open-ended working group meetings
Right.
that the UN have. That may or may not be the last. There was an awful lot of
there's so much to do
politicking,
still. Yes, exactly. Still a lot to do.
Yeah.
So we'll have the third one in June.
Yeah.
And then ideally, the UN Environment Assembly will be able to vote to officially establish the new panel in 2025 based on the recommendations that come out of that next meeting. But as you said, there's still a lot of work to do. We'll be doing some work between now and June. And then there will still be more work to do after that meeting in June, running up into 2025 to prepare all of the documents and all of the information and the guidance on how this panel will operate once it's established.
And the kind of themes that we're talking about here are horizon scanning. That's a theme a lot of scientists will recognise. Conflicts of interest procedure, because we're trying to work out how industrial scientists and a variety of scientists are going to get involved here. Capacity building for the developing nations, what that means in this context, and the institutional arrangements about how we will be able to invite scientists to actually work on the panel itself, which we hope will be in 2025.
Yeah, again, hopefully be established then. And I think it was really great too that while we were in Nairobi, we got to meet with some of our own network through the RSC, through our Pan-Africa Chemistry Network. And we got to meet with a lot of scientists who work in Nairobi and in the surrounding area at the universities there. And they were telling us a lot about their experiences of being scientists in a country in the global south and some of the barriers that they're facing and the needs that they have that they might be able to benefit from, again, for example, the capacity building that could come out of this new this new panel. And it was so useful because we were able to take that information and their insights and bring it to the discussion. So when, for example, countries were debating about how capacity building might work, we were able to say, well, we can connect you to those scientists on the ground who are the ones who will be benefiting from this and who will be working with you to make sure that this can be tailored to the things that they need, which will not only help to develop their ability to, their capacity to carry out good science in their countries, but also to contribute to the work of the panel, because in order to address the important chemicals and pollution issues of today, we need data, for example, from countries all over the world, including the global south, where sometimes data isn't collected in as robust a way as it is, for example, in the UK where we are. And so doing these sort of capacity building activities, for example, and connecting to our networks, it will feed back and forth into the process to strengthen the outcomes and the outputs of the panel in the end.
It was really insightful, wasn't it? Speaking to scientists in Africa on the ground, and just how much they need a bit more support, guidance, training to have science policy interfaces within their national context. So it's really good. Of course, everything around this needs funding as well from national governments. There are some key players who we can expect maybe some funding to come from in the future. But as I say, you know, that insight into real developing countries' issues was really good. Hopefully our colleague Jamal Hassan will be able to also provide some insights on that.
Exactly. And I think that's something that we're really looking forward to in 2024 is to really continue to strengthen our networks and to connect our networks of scientists and people all around the world to this process to make sure that everyone's voices are able to be heard and everybody is able to participate in this process in a way that's both beneficial for our, the individuals, for the people who we know, and also, again, to benefit this process and make it as inclusive and robust as possible. And that's a similar thing that some of these other groups are doing, like the women's group, for example, or the group that represents Indigenous peoples and local communities, which make sure that the people who are in the affected, in areas that are affected by chemicals and chemical pollution, for example, have their voices heard in this process as well.
So we're looking forward now to a 6-month period of intersessional work, and then the politicians and the nations will meet again, and we'll be in the major group process feeding all of our evidence and perspectives in. That'll be the end of June 2024.